Hey everyone, welcome back to Rhythm Railroad. I'm doing a quick video on how to wire up the DS64s, which are stationary decoders, to my turnouts and then also to my JMRI panel, which is what you're looking at here. I had some comments and some questions about wiring up the tortoise machines to the stationary decoders, programming, etc., etc. So I figured I'd do a quick video just to kind of help out with anybody that's just getting into this or interested in doing similar things as what I'm doing here. So in this particular example that I'm going to show here, what I'm doing is I'm working on the staging yard, which is all of this here, this whole section, but in particular these 4 tracks and these 4 tracks. What I've done is I've programmed these turnouts so that they are able to be controlled both through JMRI and also through my throttle. Whether it's a remote throttle, meaning like a Wi-Fi throttle, or a plugged-in throttle like the Digitrax DT500, which is what I have currently. But today, what I'm trying to do is also include this turnout here and this turnout here. This one's already assigned, so I don't have to worry about that one. So before we get into anything with JMRI, I figured I'd just kind of get through the hardware first and leave the software for later. So let's just take a ride over to the staging yard, and I'll show you what's physically happening there. And we'll take it from there. So my staging yard, that wasn't far away. This is what we're looking at, the turnouts for my staging yard, which open up. It's basically the throat of the staging yard. And the 4 tracks closer to me are your inbound tracks, even though those locomotives are kind of facing the other way. And the 4 tracks on the other side are my outbound. And then the 2 lead tracks are what it empties out into, which are double tracks, and then eventually they become a single track over there. So the reason why I'm doing these much later than the other ones is because I just received these 2 turnouts, which were back ordered for a while, about a week and a half ago. And I finally was able to put them in place and, wire them up correctly and all that stuff. So I'm not going to get into the actual wiring up, but the only thing I'm going to say is that these are Pico turnouts, which are kind of already DCC friendly. You have to do very little to alter them. Actually, you don't have to do anything if you don't want, but I like to alter them slightly to give just more consistency and more reliability to the tracks that potentially could be dead. And I also power my frogs. So, more about that in other videos. But the main concern right now is that there's a tortoise machine under that point right there and under this point right here. Now, if you take a look at the numbers, you see 422, 433. Before that, it's 411. So it's a sequence, 411, 422, 433. And on this side, it's 511, 522, 533. We're going to get to why that is and why I personally like doing it that way. It's not required, but we'll get to that as we go to the software. Okay, so the next thing is we're going to go over to the electrical panel, which is kind of like the brains of the whole layout. And I've set it up all in the center location here because it's basically the point where I have the shortest runs as far as wires to my entire layout. So in other words, I don't have to go very far to get to the opposite end of this because this is centralized on my layout. So when I make videos on block detection, you'll see why that makes more sense. But today we're just going to focus on the turnouts and the DS64s. So the DS64s are these white boxes that are mounted down here at the bottom of the electrical panel. And in my situation, I have 5 of them. I might add a 6th one here where I have a little room here if I need to control more turnouts with decoders. So these are called DS64s. I think they stand for D, which is Digitrax, and S, I think it's stationary, or maybe decoder stationary. I think it's more that than it is the other thing. I don't really know. All I know is what it does. And by the way, every component that you see here, including my command station and my interfaces and all that stuff, are all Digitrax products. Not because I'm affiliated with them. They have nothing to do with Digitrax. I'm not trying to sell the product. I just started with Digitrax, and I started to kind of like add to it little by little. And before I knew it, I had all this stuff. But in the back of my mind, just to it's just for me, I like to keep things consistent with the same company, even though there's other companies out there that are excellent and can be integrated into Digitrax without any problems at all. But in my mind, I just figured, Digitrax probably tested all this stuff together at some point, so there's less probability of something going wrong, and less doodling, meaning some things require getting adapters or messing with some settings and things like that. I just didn't want to deal with that as I wanted to avoid it as much as possible. So that's why. Anyways, I just wanted to get the disclaimer out there so you don't think that I'm trying to sell Digitrax. So again, the DS64s, which are the 5 boxes down here, are basically controlling what the tortoise machine is going to do. And it's only basically doing two things. It's either going to tell it to move this way or move that way, which then will make the turnout be at a closed position or at a thrown position, which is the only two things you can do with a turnout, a basic turnout. So what does the DS64 do? Well, the DS64 provides power, and it also provides data that's going into it and out of it, so that it can communicate with the rest of the network, which is all plugged in together via RJ6 wires, which are basically the two wires that you see coming out of the top there. They're like phone jacks, basically, like old telephone jacks, but they have 6 wires instead of 4, which was what the telephone wires are only use 4. So, with that said, the power has to come into the DS64 somehow, right? You got to provide electricity. So that can be done 2 ways. You could either plug it in with the provided, plug up there. Sorry about the dogs. Or you can wire it up through some of the auxiliary inputs at the bottom here. So what I did, since Digitrax basically says that you're able to power all of these up on one power source, 12 volt power source. I basically took all the wires that are on the auxiliary point from each one of them and bunched them up all together. And then I don't know if you can see that from here, but the left end of the terminal blocks there, I have one power source, which is 12 volts coming in from the bottom, and then all the wires are bunched up on the solid side and then on the striped side, whether that's positive or negative or whatever it is. And then all of those power up all of these units. So, the lights are on. I can't see those yet over there, but they're all running. So, by the way, I forgot to mention what Digitrax uses, in case you don't know, or what Digitrax calls the data wires and the system it runs is LocoNet. So whenever you hear me referring to LocoNet wires, that's what I'm talking about. It's the data wires that are coming in and out and eventually end up at the command station, which is that box right there, which then allows my throttles to communicate with the layout, and also with JMRI. Now, JMRI, and I'll get into this later, is connected through this PR4, which is basically a computer interface. It allows you to turn the LocoNet signal right here. It's coming in, and then it's going out to another one, but it allows you to make the LocoNet signal become a USB signal, which then goes up to the laptop directly, or whatever computer you're going to be using. So that's just basically an interface so you can communicate with the system, since laptops and computers don't have that kind of input on them. So now that you know that what the job of the DS64 is and how it communicates, the only thing you need to know besides that is that there are basically only 4 turnouts or 4 motors that you can control with each of the DS64s. So unless you're combining motors, which you can do, so let's say you have a crossover where you're going from one track to the other, those 2 turnouts need to work in tandem. You can't have one thrown and one closed, or vice versa. So you could actually wire them up as a pair, wire them up together, and only use one input here. So theoretically, if you had 4 crossovers, you would have 8 motors, which means that you can control all 8 motors here, but in pairs only. You can't control them individually. Now the DS64 can do other things, since it's a decoder that allows you to, to do basically, turn on and off or switch polarities, so you can move the tortoise machine. You can do other things with it, but in my particular case, that's all I'm using it for. I'm only using it to control the turnouts. So if you're interested in seeing what else you can do with DS64s, just kind of read up, read the manual. It's online, and you can see what else you're able to do with that. There's also other inputs for other things like lights and whatever. Okay, so those wires that are coming from the bottom of the DS64, which are the ones that I was just saying that you can that control the tortoise machines, those are going out to the layout. From there, they're running to each one of the tortoise machines. So basically, each pair of wires is running to the tortoise machines that are hooked up down here. So what I like to use, and this is just a personal preference, is Cat 6 wire, and I buy it, in 500-foot boxes, and it's easier for me to use those because you don't need like you don't need a heavy gauge wire to run those, and I forget what the actual gauge is on Cat 6 wires, but it's enough to get the power through over to the tortoise machines. And another thing that I wanted to mention about wiring is that you could wire up these DS64s in different ways. And what I mean by that is, on my last layout, I had the actual DS64 box under the turnouts that I was controlling. And then from there, I ran the wire back to the main panel. But in this case, I'm doing it the other way. I'm having all the DS64s neatly stacked in the control panel, and then I'm running wires over to all the tortoise machines. It should not make a difference. So, the only thing I did notice is that when I ran them on my old layout with the actual units under the turnouts, some of them were misfiring a little bit, meaning I would hit the button and they wouldn't actually, kick off right away. So I don't know. That might have been something else. It might have been just loose wiring, or it might have been something with JMRI. But I don't think it shouldn't make a difference. Okay, so now that we got rid of all the hardware, and we talked about the computer decoder part of it, where it's communicating to the system. Now let's talk about how to use software to control the actual motors. So my layout is actually on, meaning the command station is on, but the power to the track is not on. You don't need to have your track power on to control your decoders. So once you turn your layout on, all of these decoders are active. All the DS64 decoders are active. So what I'm using right now to control my layout is something called Y-Throttle, which is software that is free. Unless you want to get the better version, which gives you more options, then it's I think it's $10, and it's unlimited usage. for that. And it's great because it gives you everything you need, you know, including all the functions here. You can scroll through. And it also gives you different layouts that you can use. You could, you know, if you want to do 2 locomotives at once, you could do it this way. This is the full version, you know, but you can get the Y throttle light and do it that way. You know, so you could just doodle around with that when you download it. But you don't necessarily have to use this system. You know, there's other ways to communicate with the layout. The only thing I will tell you about this is that you need to get some kind of interface so that this can speak to the LocoNet system, which I spoke about before. In my case, I'm using a Digitrax LNWI, which I think stands for LocoNet Wireless Interface or Wi-Fi interface, I'm not sure. And that little box creates a network only for my layout. It's not like it's coming, you know, from my house, or it's not mixed in with the internet that I'm using for the computer. It's a separate network altogether, so it has no conflicts. And then what that's useful for is whenever you have a guest, all you need to do is have them download Y Throttle, which is free, and Y Throttle Lite, which is free, and then they can just control any train from their phone or a tablet or any smart device that they might have. And I think there's a limit of 10 phones that you can hook up to it before you have to get another LNWI. So, but I'm not going to have that many people down here. That's for, you know, if you're running a large club and you have like, you know, 40 people or whatever in there running trains. So, anyways, going back to what we have going on here with the turnouts. So, remember those codes that I was talking about? I basically made my own system, which I would recommend. You don't have to use my system. You can, you know, create your own system. But the way I have it organized in my head, for it to make sense to me, is that each DS64 that I have in the control, in the electrical panel, basically has a number, 1 through 5 in this case. So the first white box that you saw back there, the first DS64, is going to be in the 100 range. But the way I divided the 4 separate inputs is by doubling up the second 2 digits from the 3-digit code. So I call it like the 100 series, which is my first box. That would be 111 for the first turnout, 122 or 122 for the second turnout, 133 for the third turnout, and 144 for the fourth one. When I move to the second DS64, little white box, then it would become the 200 series. So it would be 211 for the first one, first turnout, 222 for the second turnout, 233 for the third turnout, and 244 for the fourth turnout. So as you can imagine, this would be the fourth box, or the fourth DS64, turnout number 1, turnout number 2, turnout number 3. Turnout number 4 is not being used right now. This would be the fifth box, 511 for the first turnout, second turnout, 522, third turnout, 533. Now, there's no right or wrong way of doing this. This is just the way I chose to program this, and it makes sense in my head. The only thing you have to be careful with is that you don't create an address that already exists somewhere else with something else, like block detection or any other device you might be using that requires an address. But those systems I have separate addresses for, so I know that none of these are going to conflict with those addresses, because those are up in the 700 series, 800 series. That's just the way I did it. So I know that none of them are going to be looking for anything in this range. So now that I have those codes, what I did is I went to the DS64s and I entered those codes. I programmed the DS64s so that I would have each one of those channels speaking to the LocoNet specifically for those turnouts. The way you do that is very simple. Just all you got to just look at the manual, but all you got to do basically is hold down the ID button, which is the green one, and once it starts flashing, then what you got to do on your throttle is enter the codes one at a time, and it starts to stack them. So it would be 511, then you go to the next one, 522, 533, 544, and then you're done, and it locks it in, and then you could go to the next DS64. But you can read about that, and I might even make a video of it in the future. Okay, so the next step now is to tell LogoNet that I want that address to be recognized by the DS64, and I want the DS64 to send a message to the tortoise machine that's under here to switch the decoders. So what you do is, in the Y throttle, you have to go to this mode, which is your LogoNet turnout mode, or in some throttles they call it a switch mode. So LT, it's gonna default to 1, but you know, we're gonna change that in 1 second. So I'm looking to change or move this decoder or this tortoise machine and this tortoise machine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter the address of that switch, which is 422, and then I'm basically going to either close it or throw it using the C and the T button. Now, it might be set up correctly or it might be backwards because it's just basically 2 functions. So let's see what happens when I hit the throw. Because right now it's thrown. So if I hit throw, see how it closes the turnout? Now that's backwards, but that's a super easy fix. You could do it in different ways. You could either switch the wires right on the tortoise machine, just basically flip them so that, you know, solid is the striped and the striped is the solid, or you can flip them at the DS64 itself on the 2 inputs there, or JMRI has an option that you click on it and it basically flips it. It flips the command so that the next time you hit, you know, throw it, it'll actually throw it. But in this case, you know, we're backwards here, so I gotta fix that. So close is actually gonna throw that turnout. So let's see what happens when I hit the C, and that's basically it. Let's try with 433. So I'm gonna enter 4. Sorry about the focus. 33, and once I hit throw or close, we'll see what happens. Right now it's set up for it's closed right now, so let's see if I throw it if it's correct. Yes, so that one is lined up correctly, which means the wires on the bottom don't need to be changed. And then close, there it is. So the power to the motor is being provided, like I said, by the DS64. You don't need another power source going to the motor once you hook it up to the DS64s. If you have power already on your tortoise machines because you're doing it the traditional way, you know, with like a toggle switch, be careful that you don't I've never done it, but be careful that you don't provide power from both, and then you might, you know, burn your tortoise machine. So now I know that the addresses are set correctly for those 2 machines, and that they're functioning both ways. They're switching perfectly fine. And by the way, I chose to go with the spring-loaded Pico switches here, just so I don't have to worry about the pin, you know, possibly not making it all the way to the other side of the rail, and then I get the railments. And since this is a staging yard, which is going to be limited access because of the clearance here, I want the least amount of problems. That's why I went with the Pico spring-loaded turnouts. I use the same turnouts for my main line, but I take the springs out just because, you know, out there I have access to them much easier, and it's more realistic the way they move in slow motion like that. All right, so now that we got all that in place, you know, everything's working so far that we need working. And by the way, this, you know, like we're 24 minutes into this video, but once you do the first 2 or 3, you can do each turnout in like no time. It's really fast. It's just that all my yapping is taking a long time, so I apologize for that. Okay, so now JMRI, I have my panel open, and like I said, we're trying to basically figure out the 2 outbound turnouts right here that haven't been assigned an address yet. We're trying to get those to react like the other ones are reacting. So in other words, this turnout here, which is my 411, is already assigned. I did that before. So when I click on this turnout, you're going to hear the tortoise machine for that turnout go. Watch. You hear it? And it's my, it's that 411 turnout. You click it again, it turns, and you can see the line changing, right? So every time I hit it, it shows you the status of the turnout. So that's thrown, and that's closed. So, it really doesn't matter. As long as you have it right on your panel, it really doesn't matter whether the wiring is perfect. I mean, I'm going to make it so that so it lines up, but you don't have to enter a code to work with JMRI. That's why I'm not too worried about it. And it's going to be rare that I control those turnouts using codes, using actual addresses, because I don't need to. I can do everything right through here. And I'm going to have access to this JMRI panel everywhere on the panel, on the layout rather, because I'm going to have it on an iPad, and it's going to be portable. So I'll have no issues with that. So here's what we need to do. The first thing we need to do is go into edit mode. And the way you do that is you go to file, not file, you go to options, I believe. And the first category here is edit mode, or the first option is edit mode. And you see how it says Control plus E? I use that command a lot just to make things a little faster. Because a lot of times you have to flip back and forth just to see it. So, Control E gets you from, this focus is not great, from that look to this look. So that's why I use a shortcut often. And what this allows you to do in edit mode is it allows you to basically change things and edit things. You're going to notice that all these circles pop up, which are control circles. You also have little boxes that allow you to move things around and lines and stuff. And then you'll see the grid behind everything. And all that does is just basically help you make things straight. And just so you know the spacing of things, so that you can design it and make this look as neat as possible. You don't have to use it. There's options to get rid of that if you want, but I like it, so I'm leaving it. So the next thing you need to know, the next thing you need to do in JMRI is tell JMRI that those two tortoise machines, or those two turnouts, are being introduced to the system. My battery's low. So while I plug this in, basically the concept is that JMRI doesn't know those things exist at all right now, because you haven't told the system that there's an address for them. So the way you add those turnouts is through a table that's only dedicated to turnouts. So the way you get to that is you go back to the main JMRI panel, which is Panel Pro, and then so when you open the program, this is what you see. And then what you do is you go to you go to Panels. No, sorry. You go to Tools, and then you go to Tables. And then under Tables, you'll see that there's all kinds of different options. So turnout, sensors, lights, signals, all that stuff. Right now, all we're interested is turnouts. We're just interested in assigning those turnouts. So I'm going to click on Turnouts, and what's going to pop up is all of the turnouts that are either available or that I have introduced to the system. But what you're going to see is that over here it says All, and then it says LocoNet, and then it says Internal. So I think JMRI automatically makes up internal addresses, and then you get a combination of everything. But in my case, I'm only messing with LocoNet, so I'm going to click on LocoNet just to make things look a little neater. And the way you know you're dealing with LocoNet is because there's an L and a T, and that stands for a LocoNet turnout. And then there's a code. So the other thing that I've noticed, and I haven't really studied this too much, but is that every address is a 3-number address. Now I don't think it has to be that way. I think you could do 2-number addresses, or I don't even know if you might be able to do 4-number addresses. I don't know. So look into that if you're interested in doing that. But the turnouts that I have already assigned are right here. So remember, we spoke about this: 111, 122, 144, 511, 522, 533, and the ones that are missing are just not assigned yet. I just wanted I know what area these things are in, so I'm trying to keep it kind of consistent or near each other. So here are the staging ones that we were just talking about. Here's 511, 522, 533, which are the inbound tracks. And then the outbound tracks are the ones we're dealing with now, which are the 400 series. And the only one I have assigned right now is this one, 411. So the threes I had already assigned, but I didn't give them names yet. I just have them as addresses. So I'll do that later. So right now we're looking to do 422 and 433. Now, you see they're already here. And the reason they're here is because I had already used these addresses on my last layout. So LocoNet is actually picking them up. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete them so we can start from scratch here. So, you just hit delete, you accept that, and then it's gone. And same thing with 433. I'm going to delete it, and it's gone. And I might as well just do 444 because that'll clear out the whole box. So let's say this is where we started from. I only had 411 programmed, and you can see it's a staging track 1, and I call it the B because it's the other side. So then what you got to do to add a turnout is basically hit this add button at the bottom left-hand corner here, and when you click on that, this window pops up. It's already set up for LocoNet, which is what I'm using. But if you wanted to do internal, I don't even know how to use that, but you would select it there. Now it's asking for a hardware address, which is the number that you made up. So I made up the number 422 for the second turnout, so we're going to enter that. And you're going to see that as long as you're doing the right thing, it'll give you a green check mark right here. I don't know if you'll be able to see that right there. And that tells you that what you inputted is acceptable. If you had a conflict, let's say I did 422 again, you would probably get an X there, some kind of error message there. Then username is just basically so you can label it so you know what you're talking about here. So we had 411 as staging track 1B. 422 is going to be staging track 2B. So I do everything in caps just to make things more consistent. Staging, and then track 2. Let me just put a space there. Track 2, and letter B for the outbound side. And that's basically it. Don't worry about the sequential range or anything like that. And even this, let's just keep it simple for now. Those are more complicated things that you can mess with. So once you add these 3 elements here, now you're basically done. So you just hit create. My dog is going crazy right now. Gracie, dinner will be in a little bit. Hold on. Let me finish the video. Okay, she's going crazy. It's dinner time. All right, so now that I have created that, what you're gonna see, Gracie, what you're gonna see is staging track 2B. There it is. Now, right now it's here, but LocoNet will actually, organize it in a different way once I assign it to the panel. So what you do next is you go back to your panel, because now you've told JMRI that turnout exists, and that's what you want to call it. So now you go back to your panel, which is already open. Here it is. And what you're going to do is go to the actual turnout that you want to assign. So the first turnout is here. Gracie. The second turnout is this one here. So that control circle is going to allow you to assign it. So you right click on that circle, and then it's going to give you an option to edit that turnout right here. So click edit. This window pops up, and now you're basically going to look for the turnout that you already assigned or that you already told the system that exists. So let's look for it. LocoNet, it was number 422. which is called staging track 2B. There it is. So staging track 2B. Now, remember I said that all those other addresses were already there, but they had no names? So JMRI automatically, tells you, hey, you haven't used these yet. If you want to use one of them, now's your chance. But we're looking to use this one, staging track 2B. So we're going to click on that, and basically you're done. Now, there's other things you could do. You could, let's say you have a crossover, but you have two separate turnouts that you want to use. If you hit also throw turnout, now you can assign a second turnout to work in tandem with that. So, this way you would be able to create a crossover. But we're not going to do that because it's not the situation. So we're going to uncheck that. And remember I said there's an option to invert the second turnout or to invert turnouts. This is one way to do it. So let's say you had a crossover situation and one turnout was open and one was closed. You would just click on that and it would flip the other turnout over so that it would line up correctly. This is another way to tell the JMRI how to look at it and how to establish the default location of the tortoise machine. And high turnout is when you don't want JMRI to see something because that's a little bit more advanced, And then the last thing you have here is a way to create some kind of block detection for that turnout. So when the locomotive trips that block, which is the turnout itself, you can assign it so that it looks like it's being used on the JMRI panel. But again, don't worry about that. All you got to do basically in this window for basic use is assign the turnout to the name that you had already given it on the table. So now, what you're doing here is you're telling JMRI, hey, remember that turnout address that I gave you, 422? I called it staging track B, track 2B. I want you to take that turnout and assign it to the panel. That's basically what you're doing. So when you hit done, you've basically just told JMRI, hey, when I click on this button right here, on this turnout, do what I told you to do. Control that tortoise, which is called track 2B in the staging yard. So what I'm going to do is get out of edit mode just so you can see this more clearly. So Control E. So all the control points go away. And what you're going to notice is that this turnout is kind of showing both, like it doesn't know where it is right now. Once you click on it, it'll go to the next position. So watch what happens when I click on it. See how it got rid of this? That's how you know the turnout is actually assigned, because it went to one or the other. Now when I click on it again, it should throw the turnout. So let's see if we can hear the tortoise machine. And there it is. So now this is functioning through JMRI, through the USB, through the PR4, which is then sending the information through LocoNet to the DS64s and also to the command station, which is then sending the information to the Wi-Fi interface, and then that is talking to my throttle. So I can control that same point or turnout using both. Let's see, 422. I'm going to close it or throw it. And you're going to see that it's reflected here. Now, I told you the wires are backwards. That's why you're seeing it backwards here. But if I click on it, it changes it. So it gives you the option to do both. If you're just locally trying to change it, you could use this. Or if you have a dispatcher, you could use that. Or if you have JMRI in front of you, you could use it also. So that's how you do it. So the second one's going to be quick. You'll see. So now, Control E, we're going to edit. We're going to go into the tables because we have to add that next turnout. And then over here, we're going to do add. We're going to stay in LocoNet, but now we're going to call the address 433 because remember, that's what we wanted to call it. But this is going to be staging track 3B. And, JMRI helps you out a little bit. It remembers the last thing you did because it kind of figures you're going to be doing sequences. So now we're going to call this track 3B, and you're going to create it. So there it is. You got 1, 2, and 3 over here. Remember I told you it was going to reorganize things? When we come back to this panel, 3 will be down there. And it's set up for the correct address, 433. Now we go back to the panel, the same way we did before. So you see how fast this can potentially be? Now we go to the turnout that we want to change that address to, right here. You're going to right click, you're going to edit that turnout, and you're going to look for that title that we just gave that turnout, which is Staging Track 3B. Now notice that Staging Track 2B is gone. That's because it has been assigned already. So JMRI is telling you, hey, that's not available anymore. So it actually helps you not make any mistakes and double assign things. So we're going to click on that. We're going to hit done because that's all we're interested in right now. And we're going to go get out of edit mode, Control E. And then let's see if when we click on that turnout, if anything happens. Well, now it's telling you that it's closed. So let's see what happens when I click it again. There it is. And again, if I use my throttle and try to move that turnout, you're going to see JMRI reflect that. So let's see what happens when I hit throw or close on JMRI. You see how I changed it? But I was actually controlling it through here. So it's as simple as that. That's the simplest thing I've ever learned how to do on JMRI. We're going to go real quick. This is just to show you something. Back to the table, the turnout tables. And what I'm going to, I forgot to mention this before, remember that you can invert. So remember, staging track 2B, I think was backwards. And we can check it. Let's check it real quick. I forget. So staging 2B was 422. And right now, it's looks like it's thrown. No, it's closed. So I'm going to enter 422. Oops. 422. And I'm going to try to throw it. Well, let me see. Wait. Yeah. I'm going to try to throw it to see if it changes. If it doesn't change, that means it's backwards. So we're going to try to throw it. All right. So that one's correct. I think it's 433 that we're backwards on. So 433 on my turnout and on my Y throttle. It's thrown right now, so if I want to hit close for it to do the right thing, let's see. Nothing. So if I hit throw, all right, so this is backwards, so that means we have to invert that. So I'm going to try it. Actually, I've never really done it this way, but we're going to try. So 433 is right here. We're going to try to invert that. I'm not sure why the other ones are inverted, but let's see what happens now on the panel. So 430 on the turnout. So 433 right now it's closed. We're gonna try to throw it by hitting throw, and it's not working. Cool. All right. So I don't know what I'm doing. Close and throw. All right, cool. So it's still backwards, which means that I don't know how to use that feature yet. I'm by no means am I an expert of JMRI, but I thought that's what that was for. I guess not. So unless I have to it might be that I have to close JMRI completely and reopen it for it to actually, do that. But I'm going to not click that for now, just to make sure I don't mess things up. And that's it. So that's how you basically, in a very long-winded explanation, that's how you basically program your Tortoise machines using stationary decoders and specifically Digitrax DS64s, along with JMRI and all the other fun stuff we just talked about. So I hope that helps. And I'm going to try to keep making videos like this so that, I can kind of bring it down to a very basic level, because that's what I was looking for when I was doing this as well. Just clear explanations. Okay, take care.